Welcome to Dev Diary 124. Today we're going to be talking about the joys of Gestalt consciousness in Guin and also a little bit about habitation in space. That's habitats for you and how they're going to be handled there as well. So, first of all, Gestalt consciousness, as in the base game, does not have any happiness to attach to them whatsoever, which is really good because who needs that anyway? Let's be honest. Happiness and all that stuff, it basically, in Guin, it helps with having additional luxury goods to prop that stuff up, but that's not actually there, so that is a good thing. So nothing really changes there, no happiness, no factions, nothing that will be applied to that whatsoever. Hive minds, they will be getting their own districts, their own buildings, their own strata, jobs, and planetary mechanics, which is kind of cool. They also do not produce any trade value or have any internal trade routes, which is something that has been alluded to several times, but we still have not seen anything. Of course, they do not lack, they have no happiness, which is great. Instead of crime, they have something called deviancy, which is representing drones that malfunction or go rogue. They go out there and Johnny 5 is alive, so to speak. But yeah, pops are generally divided between simple and complex drones, with also replicator drones being thrown in there. And the simple drones, actually the complex drones generating amenities, and the other ones and raw resources. Actually, no, it's the other way around. Research, unity, finished goods being done by complex drones, and amenities and raw resources by the simple drones, which is kind of good. Stability, still a factor for Gestalt consciousness. Basically, how smoothly the hive is functioning. And apparently a low stability Gestalt plant will maybe seriously impaired, as serious resource production penalties will get in there. But yeah, there is one exception to all of this stuff, which is, of course, rogue servitors and their bio trophies, as they have a bunch of stuff that they need, such as luxury goods for said bio trophies. But all this other stuff still applies to them, so they don't necessarily get happiness, but the bio trophies do. So this is something that we want to talk about in the future. Anyway, hive minds. Hive minds and machine empires are the two types of Gestalt consciousness currently in the game. Maybe in the future we will get something extra on top of that. But hive minds in general are rather cool. So basically the idea, just as it was originally set up when they first came out, they're all about rapid growth, generating as much food as possible and getting out there as quickly as you can. Basically, hive minds are the perfect wide empire because, like I said before, they do not suffer from happiness modifiers. They don't have factions. They can basically focus on growth completely and being completely and utterly self-sustaining, which is rather cool because they don't need any outside help unless they really need to, man. And that basically means that they can control things rather usefully. In addition to standard biological pop growth, they also have a special building called the spawning pool. You need to build this at 6 supply just to make sure that you can overrun this, and then maybe build another hive after that. No, StarCraft 2 jokes aside, with 6 pools. By the way, in the past this was the 4 pool. I go to BlizzCon every year. That provides spawning drone jobs. So basically, the spawning pool gives you an insane amount of additional food, which allows you to generate the resources that you need by having the ability to grow more pops, basically. So these are those complex and basic drones. But yeah, they're split up in like menial drones and complex drones. So agricultural drones, maintenance drones, mining drones, and whatnot. And those all come from the spawning pool. Very similar, probably, to the basic growth buildings that you get with standard empires right now, which is kind of cool as well. They have their own capital buildings. They do not have a colony capital or planetary capital. It goes straight to the max off the get-go. It does not grow from what I can read here, so you don't need to upgrade it. So you have a capital building right off the bat. And this all grows in from a hive district. And hive districts, that what I can see here, generates a pretty decent amount of housing, which is +8. No words on how much housing these drones actually need. I doubt it is quite a lot, but we can always see in the future when all that stuff comes out. Then, machine empires, everybody's favorite. I personally don't like to play hive minds. I find them a little bit too simplistic and a little bit too flat in order to play. I prefer to play hive machines. Let's put it that way. Although I still have not played with rogue servitors. I've played like maybe 1 or 2 games with rogue servitors, and I really need to get back into that stuff. Anyway, machine empires, very similar to hive minds, but rather. Whereas hive minds are all about being super wide and growing really rapidly. Robots, as you may expect, are basically focused on the efficient use of resources. Building complex drones as well as menial drones that specialize in certain things. So whether are jobs available, they will specialize certain drones on that one. They get their own housing district type, which is the Nexus district. And also, the resource extractors generate more jobs, whereas normal empires get less. So in this particular case, the resource extractors, they get 3 of them, as in 3 jobs per base level, and then normal empires get 2. So that's good. But the problem, obviously, is there is a offset here. Where does the cost lie? The growing of pops and machine empires is extremely expensive because obviously these drones need to be constructed, and you will have to use special drones called fabricators to build more. And if you want to build specialized drones, you may need to use certain alloys and use the metallurgist, or however you pronounce that, to build even more. So the picture we got here, we got coordinators, you need all that stuff, fabricators, and use all sorts of stuff in order to make sure that we can actually build those drones that you want. So that's the big offset there. There's no natural way of building new pops, so replicator jobs are required. Which means that you can also easily hamper any sort of machine empires by just destroying their infrastructure so they can no longer build new alloys, and then basically destroying their ability to grow. But yeah, self-sustaining once again, and having access to all the resources possible is basically what the machine empire is all about, which makes perfect sense when you have exterminators and stuff like that, as well as assimilators. The bio trophies and the rogue servitors are a little bit of a different category here because they can interact with a lot of other empires. But yeah, the assimilators and exterminators definitely fit in that particular category. Then finally for today, we're going to be talking about habitats. I know this doesn't necessarily fit with the standard the standard discussion that we just had, because obviously it doesn't really apply to any of the hive minds, mechanical empires, or Gestalt consciousness in general. No, habitats are obviously those big things in space, and I'm about to lay a couple things down for you, which you may or may not like, but before I jump to any conclusions, just hear me out. So, habitats, as of right now, 12 tiles. If you have master builders, I think it's 14. Don't hold me to that. Regardless, they're only going to be size 6. They only have 6 districts available in Guin. They're going to be smaller, and they were already smalled down in the past as well. But just like in the past, as in Utopia, when they came out, they will have their own unique set of districts. In the past, they had their own unique buildings. They were hilariously overpowered. They were nerfed into the ground, etc. That's where we are at right now. However, these new districts are going to be set up in such a way. So rather than building city, you're going to be building habitation districts, research districts, trade districts, leisure districts, and reactor districts. So that's stuff that like research, trade value. One thing you may have noticed here is that there is no mining districts. No habitat will be doing a lot of base material generation at all, which means that a lot of the habitats can either be focused on doing things like happiness generation, unity generation, tech generation, or, and this is the interesting one, any sort of generation of resources that are not basic, which basically means that the transfer of basic materials into more advanced materials is totally possible on a habitat. You just cannot use habitats to get those basic materials because there are no basic materials in space. But tell that to ring worlds that have tiles on them where you can mine minerals from the ring worlds you just built, because that makes perfect sense. Regardless, each district built on a habitat will always give you a same amount of infrastructure, which is 5 infrastructure and 1 building per 2 districts, which is kind of interesting. That means you can only have a limited amount of buildings on your on your habitat, which is interesting. Habitats can support most planetary buildings, but they also have a couple of unique ones. And as I mentioned before, they have no ability to produce any raw resources. Since Unity and research... Oh, this is interesting. Since research and Unity penalties scale towards an empire's number of districts rather than the amount of planets in Guin. Wow. Okay, I had not read that. Okay, that is... Ooh. Districts will count to the penalty scaling for researching Unity in Guin. So what I have right now is that the more systems you have under your control, and as well as the planets you have under control in the current version, which is 1.1.2, I want to say, systems and planets weigh in towards the penalty scaling of research in Unity, as in the more you have of them, the more expensive it gets. However, in Guin, and this is not particularly, it's not really defined here, but no longer will planets scale to the penalties. It's going to be the districts on those planets. Okay, that is a really big deal. That means that the less districts you have, the less the penalty scaling is. So, according to the dev diary, these are highly efficient for tall empires, as habitat districts provide a larger amount of housing, infrastructure, and jobs compared to planetary districts. That makes sense, especially if you're going to do a lot of research on habitats. You should be able to offset a lot of these malices, which is interesting. Anyway, that wraps up Dev Diary 124. I hope you've enjoyed this little shindig. Next week, we're going to be talking about the galactic market, which is cool. Apparently, we're done with the planetary rework for now. But there's a lot of stuff that we have not even gone to show in the... any of the Dev Diaries, which is kind of cool. So yeah, the galactic market has been alluded to in the past. Really looking forward to it, but we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take good care of yourselves, and as always, eat shutter.